You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast on the We Are Libertarians Network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Morrell. As always, I'm joined by our co-host, Dakota Davis, on my left. This is episode 32 of the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. Our show is about our lives in rural Indiana. It's a show about folks who are involved in politics. We promise that our episodes are going to be a fun and an easy listen. We interview people who are influencers, elected officials, political experts, and folks we just find interesting. If any of this sounds mundane to us, it's because it's the second time we've gone through it. We had a terrible problem with the live stream, but we're gonna muddle through and pretend like it's all natural again. On my right is Bill Smythe.
Thank you, sir.
Not Mike. Not Mike Smythe.
I'm like Mike.
Yes. It's the better Smythe.
Yes.
So you are working with Stephen MacKenzie for Congress.
That's correct.
And he's running in the 6th District, which is East Central Indiana here. So the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast is... we're heard worldwide, but we have a strong focus in East Central Indiana. Delaware County. Oh yeah, we've had listeners. It's crazy where we get listeners from. Unreal.
We had one at one time we had a regular listener in Russia.
I don't know what we did to upset them.
They don't listen anymore. Apparently,
were they buying Facebook ads for the recent election?
That could be.
It's plausible. On the other side of the room, my dear friend Brad Klopfenstein, who, among other things, has been the Libertarian Party of Indiana's executive director. He manages the Antelope Club in downtown Indianapolis. You have been our lieutenant governor nominee for the Libertarian Party of Indiana. You ran a massive alcohol ring of some sort, a consortium of booze, a powerful booze group. What else am I missing off there?
Let's see. Ran the Indiana Licensed Beverage Association.
That's the one.
Sold beer for a while. I am a convicted bootlegger.
Oh, that's true. You got a pardon last night, though. Last night you and the governor were hanging out at your club. Now you're in Dakota's spare bedroom, but you got a pardon yesterday by the governor for your overexcitement to sell Yingling to the people of Indiana.
We were early adopters. 3 years early, apparently.
Just by a little bit.
Apparently, he says.
It's one of those beg for forgiveness, and you did, and you got forgiveness. And front page bold print in the Indianapolis Star. So what else can you do? We're very, very sorry.
I just want to express to our listeners of this podcast who reside in the state of Indiana, the Antelope Club is so sorry that we violated the laws of the state of Indiana, and we hope that you can forgive us.
I already have.
You actually did a pretty good job of making that sound sincere.
Well, I've been just torn up with regrets.
Or he's a professional. Pick your answer.
That's the other thing is Brad's the most polished broadcaster in the room other than Dakota. Brad is WXNT and I think WIBC, a frequent guest on Abdul Hakim Shabaz's show.
Yes.
And has guest hosted a number of times as well.
Yeah, we've done that. Actually, Bill and I were talking before we went on the air. Back when Abdul's show started at 5 a.m., a couple times Bill came in, and then that 5 to 6 o'clock hour, I'm sure that audience was a tenth of what we have right now.
That's correct. And I kept asking him, why was I getting the early invite? And he said, nobody else stupid enough to come in this early.
Because I know you'll say yes,
so
right?
Thus I qualified.
That'll work. So this has been, I have to be honest with everybody. Last week may have been a bit of a ratings disaster for the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. And I realized that it was because every episode we've had, episodes 1 through 30, one of the co-hosts had been engaged.
Yep.
And then Dakota screwed up and got married on us.
Yep, that's what it was.
So last Saturday, I did what I could to make it right.
Yep.
And the lovely Sarah Potter said yes. And for ratings...
Yep, for ratings. We appreciate your sacrifice.
He took one for the team?
I have pledged my life to Sarah Potter.
Not yet.
And, I mean, at this point, I'm pretty deep. You're not getting out of it.
Have you paid the photographer?
Do you have
not that one? We had one for the engagement, but we haven't picked the next one yet. So yeah, it was fun. Got down on one knee and took her to the. If you had a chance to go around Henry County, Newcastle is the birthplace of Robert Indiana, who is the pop art sculpture guy. He had the love stamp that was out in the 60s or 70s, and the sculpture is worldwide now. Henry County had a couple of them installed in the Arts Park and over in front of the Armory. So I had it set up. I tricked Sarah into going to the park without knowing why, and had a photographer set up on the other side of the park, and had a really cool little engagement there. So
He was freaking out.
oh my God, yeah, it was like trying to keep the trains running on time.
I was hanging out with him the night before, and we ended up inviting another one of our friends over, Chase, who is also a listener to the show and has been a guest before. And while we were watching a movie, Jeremiah was going to feed the fish or something, and he started practicing his kneel.
No, that's very fake news. I took
a
knee.
Those are your exact words.
To start a heater because your bride was cold.
Yeah, I agree
I
with that.
did hold the position longer, though.
And then
I didn't want to pull a hammy.
Does this look okay, or should I go on the other knee?
Well, we found out the other knee wasn't going to work.
Yep, we did.
Because I'm so old that only the right knee was going to work for it. So
the challenge isn't getting down; it's getting
back up. I can still do that.
Okay, well,
for now.
Wait till you get married.
Jeremiah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you too on your marriage. So.
Yeah. So now it's like we've moved into wedding planning mode. So pray for me. So we'll see where we go. We're hoping to do something next summer.
I did nothing to plan my wedding. I picked one song and I paid and lined up the DJ, who was very easy because he was a guest on the show.
Basically, we're going to plan this wedding. If you come on the show, there's a good chance you'll be involved in the wedding somehow. So, if either of you need to be ushers, let me know if you got some suits. And
do you guys have any
tuxes.
Catering experience?
Well, I was in the restaurant business for 26 years, so a little.
And I own a tuxedo.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was married in Henry County. In fact, I was married in Knightstown, Indiana.
Were you married to Hoosier Jim?
Wow. While it did exist 36 years ago, no. We are actually married in the Methodist Church in downtown, the beautiful Knightstown. And our, the reception was held at what was the Holiday Inn. It's now the Garden Inn, I think.
The Garden Inn, yes.
Next to the Steve Alford place.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was the Holiday Inn Express when I was a little boy.
It was a Holiday Inn. Again, 36, so my fondest memories.
The burn scars from the holy water have healed very nicely.
Methodists don't use holy water for that purpose, but thank you, okay? That was from my earlier days as a Catholic.
I was an altar boy once, too, but they let me go. They let me out. Oh, man. All right. Well, we've insulted almost all of the religions that we have in Henry County. Does anybody have anything to say about the Friends or the Baptists while we're here?
Are there Scientologists here?
No. We're not that.
We generally don't accept cults.
Oh.
Just a couple. Good God.
More of a suggestion, not a rule.
We may have to take that sign down. We're going to cost you your job before we get to anything. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
All right. Well, so the other horrible thing that may happen, other than insulting every religion in the county, Dakota and I are negotiating for puppies.
Yes, we are.
I don't know how it happened.
It's a Christmas gift for my wife and your fiance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Siamese puppies?
There was a litter online on Facebook, and we
decided for the show it was great content if we both went out and bought puppies, and we named one Michael and the other one Dwight, like from The Office.
Or Dwight and Toby.
Yeah. I figured one would be the regional manager, the other one would be the assistant too.
Yeah. So we are. We made an offer, and we're waiting to hear back from the breeder, but I think it's going to work out. And Dakota and I may end up owning each of us owning a quarter or a half of an Australian Shepherd. So, why not? Why not introduce a puppy into your life as we go into winter time?
It's pre-child training. That's what they say.
Yeah,
that's what they say.
That's it. And your mother is very excited. She didn't know until just now.
Nope, she didn't.
She's commenting. Surprise! There might be a puppy on the way.
You might have to watch a puppy while we're in Chicago,
or two puppies.
I don't think that she's going to want two puppies and then four other grown
They need
dogs
each other
in
for
house.
warmth. It's a litter still. They're very young.
I don't think that's how it works.
It could be. Anyway, so that's going on. All right. let's change subjects before we run the great puppy deal of
But
2017.
we do need some serious name
Yeah,
suggestions.
you need names.
We do need name suggestions. They're both
Because
boys.
Audrey said that she didn't want a dog named Michael.
She wants Dexter, and I don't know why you'd name your dog after a
She
serial
wanted
killer.
Dexter or Zeus. I said Rand, like after Rand Paul.
That's
and
fine.
she says Rand doesn't even sound like a real name. I was like, well, you got me there. I really can't argue with that.
Randy Moss, Rand University,
Well, that's a Rand.
and Rand Paul.
Yep.
I
I like the name Rand. I think it's a great name for a dog. Can't you just hear like, come here, Rand.
So is the other one Ron? Is that how you're going to do this?
Rand and Ron.
either way. Who's the guy that hit Rand?
A Democrat?
Oh man! All right, so we have Bill here, and you have been. I've watched on Facebook. You and your candidate and your campaign team have been barnstorming the 6th District of Indiana. Luke Messer is our current congressman, and he's looking for the upgrade into the I only have to interview for my job every 6 years seat. So you guys have been running around doing Lincoln Day dinners, GOP clubs, all kinds of different events. Tell me about Stephen MacKenzie, why we should be interested in his candidacy, and what it's been like so far.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and thank you, Brad, for roping in to this. Originally, we were invited. This was going to be Stephen's interview, and there was a problem with his schedule, and I agreed to sit in lieu of it because I didn't want your fans to go without, content for this evening. So that's why I'm here.
We will do nearly anything for content.
Brad's here just because he's a good friend and a sucker for being on television and or radio. But Mr. MacKenzie, who I ran into, and some will probably already note, similarly to Luke Messer, ran in the 5th District prior to now running in the 6th District last year when I was running for county commissioner. And I got to know him because a lot of our events, of which Brad went to several of them, so he probably got tired of my talking points. But Stephen was at as well, and we did some fundraisers together. And I developed a great deal of respect for him. I don't necessarily align with all of his positions per se. They are much more on the Trump wing of the Republican Party, and I'm more in the Rand wing of the Republican Party.
He's a hashtag Make America Great Again.
He is a
guy.
MAGA, and proud of that. Okay,
I mean, I've seen it on his ads, his political ads on Facebook.
For me, it's I want to support a person who believes what they believe and will act on what they believe, and this is the guy that does that. So, in terms of who he is or what he is, he's a 20-year Air Force reservist, so he's a big pro-Second Amendment guy. In fact, just so you know, I feel very comfortable in his presence everywhere in the 6th District.
You guys can't go to Buffalo Wild Wings, however.
Well, and believe it or not, we haven't been invited, and it's hard to believe with my history in the restaurant industry that they wouldn't ask me in. But that's probably where he is today, is kind of a continuum of the Trump narrative. Okay, again, not necessarily strong advocacy of myself personally, but I do appreciate what the president's done in terms of creating. I would say havoc in Washington, and some of that's been very positive, some not so much. But Stephen believes that both in, like I said, the Second Amendment, he's strong in, what was that?
Look at my phone.
Brad is very popular.
Okay.
It's the way it goes.
Right. He is a staunch pro-life conservative. Stephen is a born-again Christian evangelical. His father was a pastor. His brother's a pastor. He comes from a very God-fearing family, I would say. And he thinks that this country, and to the degree I 100% support this, has lost its sense of direction, and he can make a difference in Congress. And you could argue that there's proof to that based upon both the inactivity of what they've done and the ineptness of what they've done. So I'm pleased to work for him. I'm glad he asked me to join his team. I had been lobbying at State House. I'll leave that swamp ball to it's a separate conversation. Brad has, put his feet in that water previously. I was working on video gaming, and I was in a lull. And again, as a friend and longtime friend of Stephen, he asked me if I could help him. I said, sure, I'll.
You were
see what I
working
can
in
do.
video gaming? Is that what you said?
I was working for video gaming. legalizing video gaming terminals in restaurants and bars.
Not like on the Xbox, but for
yeah,
money.
He was doing like serious stuff with video games. He wasn't just playing them for fun and getting paid for it.
Well, I do that as well, but that's a separate conversation.
You get paid for it?
I don't get paid for Xbox Live. Call of Duty doesn't compensate you, okay? But really, it's all my business. I have a small Smythe lobby group, and this is an extension now. I'm moving into campaign.
Some consulting and some campaign work.
Campaign.
So you're working as the political director now?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Which
Very
is
good.
a nebulous title that basically covers everything.
I understand. I volunteered with the Rex Bell campaign. I started as treasurer, and I was the campaign manager until I guess I'm still the campaign manager because we haven't closed the treasury out.
Right.
Yeah, that's the way. That's
when
I understand
I
how
met
it
you
goes.
last year during the Rex Bell.
That's right. We did.
Campaign. You guys
This
came
is
up to my restaurant.
This has been a reunion. Rex had his stroke just before the election, and Brad and Brett Bittner and myself barnstormed Indiana election day, and we stopped in at Claude Nanny's and had lunch and had a good time. So it's a nice little reunion here today.
It is. Yeah. Unfortunate circumstances to do it, but actually that was a very fun day.
It was. It was a good day. And it turned out okay. Turned out everybody, Rex as well, and the LP had a good showing, and we did, we maintained the calendar he was going to have. So you, speaking of big districts and running all over the place, this 6th district, 19 counties, right?
It's
18.
It's 18 and a half.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Scott County it's half of Scott County, and so I call it 19 because it doesn't really matter.
You may as well round up.
Once you dip in there, you're there.
That's
Right.
right.
The methy half or the
The freedom-loving half. It's the liberty half.
It's the God-fearing half. Okay.
The freedom-loving half is also kind of coinciding with the methy half.
Well, that just cost us 700 votes. Go ahead.
Well,
That's assuming that they're all listening.
next on the list was to insult everybody in Fayette County,
Okay.
Dakota. If you have your list of insults for them.
Okay.
I don't. I actually didn't print that off.
We're well received in Fayette County, so can we pick another one, please? I will say that while I have been in or around politics for way too many years, and Brad and I could tell long and arduous stories, I have not been primarily in the 6th district, so this is kind of new territory for me. The process of the election and meeting with people and that stuff is the same. It's just
Absolutely.
new territory.
But you're meeting a lot of new folks and
a lot of new
different
folks. And Brad will note, I'm meeting a lot of people who are outside of my normal sphere of people, and it's been a learning experience for me.
The Henry County politics so far this last year has revolved around windmills and a doughboy statue.
I heard on both of those. I came to the Tuesday night Republican Club dinner on behalf of Stephen, who happened to be in D.C., and as we were driving through, I want to say in or around Kennard, just for the sake of our conversation.
Sure.
And my wife was with me, which it was like a reunion for her to come back into the county, and she's like, and I'm just laughing because I see the signs that say no to the windmills, and I go, what's that all about? She gave me then the full length of her knowledge on the subject. Of course, I had not known, so now I'm versed.
It's become like the Hatfields and McCoys around here. And as the libertarians of the group, I think we're probably as pragmatic and as in the middle of the issue as you can be. We've talked about this a number of times.
But for so many people, if you're in the middle, then you're on
you're against
the wrong
us.
side.
You're against both sides.
Yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah, it's we generally don't want to tell people what they can't do with their ground, but we also don't want to subsidize everybody else so that they can build the windmills either. So, anyway, you're not here to talk about that one
I
necessarily.
had a good conversation with Clay, the barber, our other co-host, today about the windmill issue actually, and he was telling me he made just like one little small comment at the last county council meeting, and all of a sudden, the people that are anti-wind were like just strong, thought that he was, this is our guy, right? And then it went 2 days later, and he made some other comments, and the same people that were cheering for him were now calling for his resignation.
Yeah,
that's how extreme.
Welcome to small town Indiana.
Yeah.
It is. It's intense.
I want you to know that I don't think that Hamilton County is small town Indiana. We have the exact same problems.
Yep.
I mean, part of why I ran for commissioner last year was because there was the year before there was an issue with the fire training center that morphed into a disaster, very similar to your wins. I don't want to get into weeds and bored your listeners, but there was a county council group that was opposed, and the commissioners were in favor, and they wanted a county councilors that were in favor, so they ran advocates to achieve their result, and I was opposed, not specifically because I don't believe the county has a role in paying $40-some million for a fire training center,
Sure.
which I did, but because I didn't think that the commissioners should have a rubber stamp on the county council.
Very fair.
And that wouldn't change by county.
No, that's an issue across all 91 counties that have county commissioners, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Marion County gets to play by their own rules.
But there's 29 of them. So they
25 now.
The Klopfenstein group.
Yes.
Oh man! So yeah, how many counties have you guys made it to?
We have been to all 18. Actually, I take that back. We have only been to 16. There's a couple we haven't been to in part because, believe it or not, since we are not of the establishment, we haven't been formally welcomed by the establishment. And we were just doing it as a courtesy to introduce ourselves and share our message. And some have rebuked or either not replied.
So the race is starting to shape up. It looks like you have 3 or 4 candidates that are active and that are showing up at events. Are there debates on the horizon, different events scheduled that you're expecting? Or I know there's a U.S. Senate debate coming up in Fort Wayne in March for the GOP side. I don't know how far along that is yet. If you had media groups offer, or if the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast needs to set this up for you guys.
You guys might be the guys to do it. Currently, we are not reaching much into next year, at least in terms of planning. We are next week. There's an event in Hancock County, our home county, because Stephen's based out of Fortville. That's where his campaign office is, and he's moving to. The women's GOP group has invited all the candidates. 3 are attending: Kreider, Jonathan Lamb, and Stephen. It's not a debate per se. They're going to give us each 10 minutes to make our pitch, and it's kind of their holiday thing. So I can only say that it's likely to be
everybody's going to be there and have a chance to speak.
Yeah, and that's really it. And the vice president's brother apparently couldn't make it for whatever reason.
It'll be a lot like most libertarian presidential debates. There's just 3 guys up there agreeing with each other.
The ones I don't think anybody will be stoned on this one. Now I'm not speaking for all of them.
Are you sure that all 4 candidates are not on the run in South America? There aren't warrants out for any of them?
I'm only speaking on behalf of my candidate. He is not. Okay. So that'll be that event, and I agree with you. I think there will be debates next year. I'm not convinced that all the candidates will want to participate in debates for the very obvious reason that you guys struggle with it, right? I mean, they don't want to debate people who actually have principles and stand for those principles and continue to reinforce them in public. And that is what Stephen does, and he does very well. I mean, in face-to-face meetings or in small group meetings, it's an impressive.
Very good. So Congress has been active this week. We saw the Senate, the House passed a tax package about a week, 2 3 weeks ago, and I woke up on Saturday morning or Sunday morning that the U.S. Senate had gone through and they passed their tax bill at 2:30 in the morning. And I woke up to Senator Warren reading, she did a Facebook Live and did a great job with it, reading a statement that they had been given a package about 2 hours before they were supposed to vote on it, 500 pages, handwritten changes that were photocopied, and then they asked everybody to go ahead and vote on it. Biggest legislation that's come through probably since Obamacare. Very similar process to Obamacare where you had no time, besides just passing it because they're just rubber stamping an issue going through. Tell me, have you guys looked at that issue, the order and the way Congress is running? Because I compare it to what we have in Indiana, and I know you guys can both share it in the way, an idea becomes a law in the state of Indiana. It seems like it's vastly different to
I'll let Brad tackle the latter part of relative to Indiana. My experience, excuse me, in the Indiana process is not that it's that much difference. Okay, I mean, again, they have quorum-proof majorities, so in any public hearings are a courtesy. With respects to Washington, for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to let Stephen's opinions be expressed in a subsequent interview.
Absolutely. And
my observation would be mine. I think it's a shambles. No, there was a word on one movie. What was it? Shamocracy or something. But anyway, where it's just it's an embarrassment.
Idiocracy?
Idiocracy, I apologize. So it was just kind of an embarrassment, the mechanism. Even if I favor the outcome, okay, and let's say for the sake of this conversation, I favored Obamacare, which would be a stretch. But favoring the outcome doesn't necessarily mean you appreciate or respect the methodology. And the way they did, that's the problem.
Yeah, and I want to point out a little bit of the hypocrisy of the people that were in favor of Obamacare whenever the legislation got passed. And each time that you brought up how ridiculous it was that they had 3 hours to read through 500 or so pages of a bill, right? All the proponents would say, well, that's why they have staff. They have staff that goes through that, and each person takes this many pages, and then it makes the 3 hours go by really fast, and you get a summary. That's what they say, and that very well may be true, but now the same people who were for that are now freaking out that Elizabeth Warren posted a video because she only had 3 hours to read through the bill, and it's ridiculous either way.
The same could be said with the hypocrisy of a party that was previously opposed to deficits, who now appear to be conveniently not opposed to them. Okay,
upset that there's 1.3 trillion added to the debt. Right?
Again, it's hard for me as a Rand Paul wing of the Republican Party to merge these conflicting actions and say, yes, I'm good with them. Okay, because I'm not.
Wait until you're a congressional staffer and you're in charge of herding the cats, Mr. Smythe.
Well, let's hope that we get to that opportunity. I personally will not be going to D.C. regardless. That's kind of not my expectation. I hope we are successful, and I hope I have a candidate that will go on to serve for his 4 terms, because that's his objective, is term limited, and that other people deal with that swamp. And I'll be glad to service in the state of Indiana and service the representative here. So in Fortville,
that'll be a campaign office.
You don't want to go to Washington, D.C., but you want to have the opportunity.
I want the candidate to go because I think he will best represent this district.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether I physically go is not germane to my objective.
So, Brad, in Indiana, if somebody wants to change the alcohol laws, aside from the
convicted bootlegger,
aside from the lobbying that you have to do, the actual process. You have an idea, you file a bill, the bill gets to a committee or it gets killed. Right now there's a summer study committee, so these ideas really do spend a lot of time in Indiana at least getting discussed, and there's some public discussion.
Yes, there's the official discussion, and then there's the Antelope Club bar discussion.
and then there's
one of those is more effective than the other.
Yes. But it's not it. I guess what I'm saying,
on which one it is.
We haven't seen on this federal tax bill, we haven't seen this go through a committee process.
No.
You see nothing. And I guess that's my frustration, and it comes from both sides, and I'm not picking on the Republicans any more than the Democrats, because I've sat here as a disinterested, or neither one of them are my team. At least when I was very interested in the highway bill that passed in Indiana. We knew what was in it, and there were two different packages, and they were working through the House and the Senate, and it took 3 months. And they took testimony, and people could go down, they could discuss, you could see what was in the current bill. You went through 2 or 3 readings. This thing made the House floor one time. It made the Senate floor one time. I don't know why we accept this. That's the part that I'm just screaming, and I'm hoping that your candidate will run against Congress a little bit too here at some point.
I share your frustration, okay? And the only thing I think safely promise, because technically everything else is up for debate, but
sure.
Stephen is working with the Freedom Caucus, and from my perspective, this is again my perspective, the things that have gone amok somewhat have been controlled by the establishment. One of the advantages or perceived disadvantages, depending on who you are, is the Freedom Caucus is out there trying to build some normal order and some what I believe is true conservative principles.
And that was what was promised when John Boehner went out,
Right.
and the Freedom Caucus was very instrumental in that. And they, Paul Ryan was the candidate that everybody could agree on. And now we've seen members of Congress saying that this is even worse than we had with Boehner.
Well, yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that mechanism was flawed, because part of the problem is that the Freedom Caucus was not powerful enough to then implement some of those
Right.
desires. So
They only had about 30 or 40 votes,
That's
enough
correct.
to disrupt something. They're not enough to be a
let's
powerful
just
group.
Look at the 6th district for this, for obvious for the sake of this conversation. If you had Congressman Messer, who was not a member of the Freedom Caucus and clearly not aligned, you could argue probably was more.
He's in the House leadership. He was
in
number
the
3 or 4 in House leadership.
/ establishment lane. And Stephen is working with these guys, and part of the challenge will be that they need to expand their numbers from 40 to 65 or 75, and they need candidates who meet the litmus test of their objectives and their agenda, but then can actually that they trust will follow through once they get there, because another congressman in this state, accepted their largesse and their promises and then didn't fulfill that, and that's troubling to them. Now they're hesitant to accept new people on board.
Anybody that's a Hoosier, all Hoosiers are stained.
Well, it's very possible. I can't speak to that because I personally am not negotiating with them, but I would say that the congressional candidates are troubled. I mean, they're troubled by them.
All right, very good. Well, we appreciate that portion. We're gonna transition gracefully back to Brad,
Please.
Well, thank you.
and talk about how in the heck I can buy
You're the self-made expert on this.
How I can buy
Self-professed.
how I can buy that second beer for you on a Sunday, because it's Dakota's fridge is looking pretty sparse, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get him to a liquor store between now and then.
I refuse to buy beer until all the Milwaukee's best are gone.
Now, I have 2 things to say. One, I want everybody to know I gave up a hot date to be here tonight.
Yes.
2, when I entered, I was given the choice of Not Your Father's Vanilla Cream Ale or Milwaukee's Best.
There was a Mickey's and a Leinenkugels
There was
watermelon.
The Leinenkugels was of the fruit variety.
I will
the
say,
fruitiest of the fruitiest.
I will say I should have gone with the Milwaukee's Best.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty bad.
You do realize, Dakota, that he is a banquet guy, okay? He is a Coors Banquet devotee.
Where's my contract for
Yes.
appearing here? I mean, I should have been a writer. No green M&Ms, Coors Banquets.
So back in the old days of the Boss Hog of Liberty, we used to broadcast poolside at my house. It's gotten a little chilly for that, but then we would have moved it inside to the dining room. I do have a pretty well stocked beer fridge.
He does,
but we have a hell of a studio here, so it's
I
a
like the
trade off
studio.
we had to make.
Okay.
But
see, at one point in time, I drank Bell's Two Hearted Ale.
I like that.
all the time.
Those are gone now.
And I'm trying to not drink beer during the week like I used to.
Is that what married life does for you?
Well, I don't know if that's what it is, but like everybody says, that, after you get married, you gain the happy 20. And I was like, I better stop drinking beer. Otherwise, that's going to be me in like a week.
But they don't define the period, okay? Just so you know, in 36 years, yes, I gained 20.
It wasn't instantaneous.
Well, no. It actually, most of it happened when I stopped smoking. And that's
yeah.
where your danger is, okay?
Well,
Oh, you got that to consider now too.
That's right. Well, you have to take up
You
smoking.
might lose.
take up smoking
Take up
to give
smoking.
it up.
You can lose
okay?
20 to gain 30.
Right.
There we go.
That math isn't that bad for your health, really. Oh man! So Brad, our former state senator here, Bev Gard, is leading this summer study committee, or this winter. this off cycle committee. I guess they call it summer study, but really we're into December now. So.
Right.
And they just finished up meeting. There are 3, as I understand it. I watch this from I sell rebar during the day, so I don't get a chance to watch this like you do. But I understand
so much rebar around here.
Man, we need more. We need more.
I'm pro rebar and I vote.
Thank you. We could thank the governor yesterday because there's going to be a lot more construction projects over the next few years. Everybody's taxes got raised, but there's probably going to be more rebar, which is good for the day job. There are 3 different major lobbying groups or 3 different organizations that are involved in getting beer out into, or beer or spirits or wine out into the public. you have convenience stores, you have liquor stores, and you have grocery stores. Is that
Right.
the three different
in the
distribution
off-premise.
methods?
So
Yeah,
off-premise is carry out for home consumption. On-premise would be your bars, restaurants,
Right.
private clubs.
Yeah, I guess we're talking about the home. Generally, you guys are mostly, you have these ridiculous licenses you have to buy,
Correct.
but you can pretty much do business when you want to.
Yes, and a lot of that was me and Bill and Ron Breimeyer 8 and 10 years ago kind of cleaned up some of the ridiculous on-premise laws, and yeah, we got pretty well. We now have uniform 7-day-a-week sales hours, and you can now buy beer on Election Day and Christmas Day and all those other ones that you want to buy beer on.
Every day.
Every day, yeah.
Dakota, for Christmas, you want to go buy beer?
Absolutely.
We might do it. Might happen.
Actually, last year was the first.
2 years ago.
2 years ago was the first year we were open. It was
Yeah.
the first. As I note, it was the first year since 1982 we sold beer on Christmas, and everybody says, "Why?" It's like because it was illegal. I'm not like Brad. I have.
You were missing
some-
out on a big market.
Yeah, I was clearly.
Well, you're not like Brad. Now you're out of business.
yeah. See how that worked? I should have been more inventive
Should have just ran illegal Yingling lager
on Christmas only.
on Christmas only.
Christmas special. So what's going to happen? We're looking. We're I guess a month away, and we've got State Representative Melanie Wright's going to be on the show. So this is something we're definitely going to be speaking with her about in a couple of weeks when she joins us. She's the Delaware County, Yorktown area. She's the representative up there. So it's definitely something we want to discuss with her. And then Senator Kreider, we're still expecting to have him on, and I expect he'll still continue to be in the Senate next year and be a part of this. So help us be educated to know what to expect, and help the listeners that are going to be tracking this.
Sure. When they announced former Senator Bevgard as the chairman of this commission, me and a lot of other people that follow alcohol issues closely kind of thought that was a nod towards keeping the status quo, that this is, they're going to take testimony and nothing's going to come out of this, and the way the laws have been or the way the laws are going to be. I was very impressed that she actually called some people out, and she very much was of the opinion that 70% of Hoosiers or more want alcohol reform, and that was kind of
That's their mission.
that was the mission of this commission, and she kind of held them to it. Now they came out with recommendations for Sunday sales, but they stopped short of cold beer in convenience stores and other places. Both of those seem to go hand in hand. Right now, the big box stores, grocery stores, and liquor stores have their own agreement where the grocery stores and the liquor stores will support Sunday sales, but not support cold beer beyond the liquor stores where it currently is.
So if Dakota and I agree on something, and we just give money to Brad, who happens to be a state legislator, is that a guarantee that what we want is going to happen? Because that seems like it was reported by the news that our groups have agreed that we're going to go ahead and do this process. So then the news reporter, well, hey, this is coming, but that's not. I think that almost triggered some legislators saying, "Wait a minute, we never agreed to that."
Yeah.
It
Yes,
did.
I think the
It
bigger
did.
thing, it's not so much the money, it's if you run into your state legislators and you speak to them face to face, and your kids are in the same little league, and you maybe go to the same church, they're going to have a hard time telling you no because they have to see you over and over again in the community. So it's not so much the money, it's the liquor stores do a great job of each liquor store owner knows their legislators on a first-name basis.
Okay.
Whereas convenience stores, Kroger, their store managers aren't going out and meeting with legislators. They don't have that face-to-face interaction, and so they're more this nebulous group as opposed to neighbors.
Because your liquor stores are generally locally owned. They're businessmen that are in the communities where Kroger or not Marsh anymore, but Kroger or Walmart or Meijer, they're corporations.
Right.
And they don't have the grassroots network that the liquor stores do.
That's exactly right. They don't engage their employees to go out and do this sort of thing. I will say the liquor stores generally have the moral high ground, if you will, in that they are Indiana domiciled. They are pretty much the definition of small business. I've always said where they seem to fail is they go out of their way to insist on not serving their customers as fully as they should. I also think the liquor stores could do a much better job of giving it if all you have to sell is alcohol, you better do a darn good job of providing a lot of options to your customers.
Right, and that's the opportunity they have as we're in the current year. People don't just have a taste for Brad does, but people don't just have a taste for Coors Original anymore.
Right.
They want to buy their Bell's Two Hearted or their 13 different varieties of Yingling or Leinenkugels or their Not Your Father's vanilla cream ice or vanilla cream ale. Everybody but Brad seems to think it's cool.
This is going to haunt me for days.
It has some sort of a Watson on it though, or something. It looks like it's got a car that gets me going.
It's a man and an old 50 style Indy.
It's a
roadster.
Yeah.
Which implies to me that this guy is trying to get in that car and drive away from this bottle as fast as he can.
He's trying to get away.
Isn't that stuff bad?
It looks like the Pink Zinc from 1955. That one's for that's for your neighbor Zach next door. That's his shout out for the day. Oh,
Have
man.
we shouted out with Darren Jacobs yet?
No, not yet. I called him. I picked on him on the internet earlier, but didn't do anything.
Chicken Wrangler.
So you had like this premonition, Brad, that this agreement that they seem to have. You had appeared on Abdul Hakim Shabazz's show about 2 weeks ago, and almost the grand bargain that they seem to have come to. You had pitched or said, "Hey, this is what they need to do if they're smart," years ago.
Right. I said liquor stores are going to have to give up Sunday sales. And if they at least compromise now, they might be able to retain cold beer sales. But when I said that was 5 years ago. And attitudes have shifted even more. I mean, just because the grocery stores and liquor stores have this agreement, I think that there is going to be some legislative backlash. And legislators are going to say, listen, just because you two lobbying groups have agreed doesn't mean that we're buying into this.
Now, did you remind the governor last night when you saw him that Rex, in his debate with him, mentioned that if on a day like today you've got your warm beer and you happen to lose heat and the temperature drops, now you're making the shop owner a criminal because now it's 25 degrees and we're selling cold beer instead of room temperature beer?
There is nothing in statute that says what room temperature is or what cold beer is. So if Jay Ricker and his convenience stores that have a beer and wine license, if he chooses to keep the interior at 36 degrees and that is room temperature.
If he happens to have a 36-degree room and that's where the beer is available for pickup, that theoretically could be a next step?
Well, couldn't be a separate room. It would have to be the entire facility. So
welcome to Ricker's as their teeth are chattering. And the Mexican restaurant that he opened in there, all the food is sold cold.
Yeah, so they could do that.
But it's plausible.
Yeah, it is.
All right.
You have to get a hot toddy to warm up.
Oh, man. What National Association of Gun Rights Owners has weighed in, and they just want to know, are you guys drunk? Where is this Chris Strangle guy? Man, they're logged into the wrong We Are Libertarians show, I think.
I think so.
This is Beer Talk with Klop and Smythe.
Yeah. And not drunk.
Not drunk.
Just because I couldn't possibly stomach to have more than one of these.
Yeah, we're not far enough in to be drunk yet. So let's change the subject.
Well, hold on. I'm not done with
you've got more on
alcohol yet. Yeah.
We're being accused of being drunk over here, Dakota. We don't want to lose
lose
the crowd.
I just want to talk for a minute. I read an article that was posted to Aaron Dickin, a former guest and Newcastle City Councilman's page, and it was an article talking about Mike Pence, and it was talking about like his early career, his radio career, college and stuff, and it was actually like super informative, very well written. It was a great article, but in that article, we learned one thing about Mike Pence that has to pertain to the alcohol. He was the president of his fraternity at Hanover College, and he also has zero chill. And whenever they got caught drinking alcohol, they said usually one of the guys in the fraternity would take the blame, say
whoever opens the door raises their hand, and it's their fault.
They say, all 4 kegs in here are mine.
Personal use.
They don't belong to the fraternity. But Mike Pence happened to open the door one time and said, "Oh no, everybody pitched in for these." Zero chill, Mike Pence. Zero chill. I expected more, honestly.
Former mayor of Rushville, John McCain. Do you know John?
I know John well. He's a fine antelope.
He went to Hanover, so anytime there's Mike Pence stuff, I go to John, and I asked him about it yesterday, and he said it just must be a slow week for Newsweek if this is what they're reporting. That was the defense. I was like, man, you gotta.
Now,
you gotta raise your hand. If it's your job, you've got to raise your hand and take one for the team.
You should. Although, when Rupert was running against Mike Pence for governor, that was one of the concerns that we tried to put out there, was that Pence, when he was in D.C., his staff wasn't allowed to drink, even on personal time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and we brought that up a couple times in debates and forums, and his staff scrambled to say, he's not going to carry that policy over to Indiana. But it's like, well, why wouldn't he? He's doing it in D.C.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not chill when it comes to booze. I've been told he occasionally has a glass of wine, but I highly doubt it.
Do you have anything to say about the Pence family?
Other than the fact that he's our vice president, he obviously knew the greatness he was going to achieve. That's why he didn't drink in college. I have no clue.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting, this article that I read talking about. They were talking to one of his really good friends back then in college, and he said that he can remember whenever Mike Pence came to the realization that one day he wanted to be in the White House. And so, he's been working on that since he was at Hanover College. His goal has been to get to the White House, and now he's a heartbeat away from being the most powerful man in the free world.
Well, the Washington Examiner did an article on his older brother, and he was...
he's got a few brothers.
His oldest brother.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. And apparently in that article...
Not the 900-pound gorilla?
No, that is the one.
Oh, that is the one.
Yes, Greg is the oldest, okay?
Okay.
And apparently the article about him was that he distinguished himself from his brother in any number of ways, that he was not like him, including that he was not... didn't share the same faith. No, Christianity is certainly the commonology, but not to the degree. Whereas Mike identifies himself as a Christian
conservative Republican, and in that order.
Right. And Greg was not willing to adopt those. So there was that article, and then there was another that talked about the differences. But then there was one that came out today from the Daily Caller. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I did see that.
About my candidate, Mr. MacKenzie, and some of the difficulties that he's experiencing from the establishment.
He's received some pressure.
Yeah, and it's been frustrating. Again, some of it's not totally a surprise. We shouldn't be surprised. They would prefer to keep their people in their lanes and have their answers the way they want them prescripted. And Mr. MacKenzie is not going to follow that process. So.
Everybody has to interview for the job. That's something we've preached around here for a long time, whether we're Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or Independents. There are no guarantees as to who's going to have it. There's going to be a very, very, very spirited race for the U.S. Senate seat. I think you've got 3 candidates that are very well financed, and 2 or 3 that are, that are going to try to find a way to get on the ballot and see what disruption they can get. And I think we have 4 strong candidates on the GOP side, on the Republican side, and hopefully the Libertarians we field a good candidate to debate the Republican and the Democrat in the fall. And I know we have Lane Siekman is scheduled, and I know there's at least 1 or 2 others that are making the rounds on the Democrat side. So it's healthy to have multiple people running. It's a very healthy thing.
I guess the article today, probably the biggest lament is that it appears that there is a preordained decision that the vice president's brother is going to represent the district because it's a legacy candidacy, and so that should trouble you guys. It really should. It would trouble the heck out of me if I was in the 6th. That would be a problem. If someone's telling me who should be the next guy.
Is it John Conyers in Michigan?
Yeah,
who's picked his successor? Tried to pick his successor this week.
I think Andre
Carson.
Julia picked her successor by default. Really, the party does in all cases. And Conyers was just, I think, the most blatant example of this extension, okay?
Yep.
And it's troubling. It should be troubling to all Americans. Personally, I think if we go anyone post 10 years in D.C. needs to be finding their way out of there. I mean, I could lower it, but 10's probably a fair start.
I've come around on that issue. I used to be a no term limits kind of guy.
Because the election's up every
exactly,
2 years.
The election, it's a job interview. But you know what? No, that system doesn't work.
We have debated
I was
this.
the same way just last year. I didn't really necessarily agree with term limits. I thought, it's our job to implement the term limits, and we are just doing a crappy job.
Yes,
that's fine until they pick their districts.
Yes, absolutely.
And you don't, and it just it becomes just about impossible sometimes. You have, you look at a state like Indiana, and you have what will probably be 1 to 2 competitive races.
Correct.
As the maps are drawn. It's just the reality of it. And that's, it makes it easier for the Republicans or Democrats to only have to invest in certain races. The 6th district may be one of those this time, depending upon who the candidate is and what happens.
Who comes out of the primary, clearly there'll be some national attention. If it's the vice president's brother, they're going to attack. I mean, there's going to be any number of issues that I'm not going to go into tonight, but there's some fodder out there, and the legacy is a problem.
Very good. So the vice president's other half, Mr. Trump, President Trump, he made some major foreign policy moves yesterday, Dakota.
He did.
You put this on the itinerary for the night, so I'm going to let you lead this.
Well, it wasn't really in the original plan whenever we first started discussing this episode because it's so recent. My original plan was to talk about the monument resizing in Utah. Because I thought that was a fairly good issue to talk about.
The monument that's been around for 24 months.
Yeah, that the media is blowing up about. All of a sudden, things have gone back to the way it was in 2015, and now we're freaking out. And even though it's still in public land, but we won't get into it too much. But basically, Donald Trump just came out and, like he does with everything, just kind of dropped a bombshell and did it super calmly without really, addressing it gracefully, I will say. I mean, he just came out and just was like, hey, guys, by the way, the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and that's where we're going to move our U.S. embassy. And then chaos ensued in the Middle East. Not here. Not really.
Did
here.
It really ensue, or did the media, did the chaos happen in the media's world, and then they morphed it into...
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that
it happened.
I'm kind of glad that you brought it up, because it was late afternoon whenever Donald Trump first made the announcement. So it was late afternoon over in the Middle East, and everybody thought that it was going to be a lot worse than what it is. And then, we all know how
this does make the U.S. as the only country that has their embassy in Jerusalem.
That's not true. There's been one since then.
One since yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, so we were the first.
Potentially. Yes. Not necessarily the first. There have been multiple countries, including Great Britain in the past, that have had their embassy in Jerusalem, but they have since moved out of there because of the United Nations and how they classify Israel as a state. So the United States isn't the first to ever do this. We aren't the first people to put our U.S. embassy in Jerusalem.
This has been promised by Presidents Carter, Clinton,
Bush
number 2. I don't think Obama ever did, and then Trump did promise it as well.
It's actually
it's not a surprise or a secret.
It was a 1995 U.S. Embassy law that Clinton signed.
In the 90s, he didn't sign it. It went in. The Congress passed it, and then it became law without signature.
Okay.
Because he didn't want to mess up his negotiations.
Gotcha.
And it was supposed to take place by 1999, and then it never did.
Yeah, it was supposed to be implemented by 1999, and then all the presidents after that said, what he said he was going to implement, I'm going to do it this time, guys.
Right.
I'm going to do it. I'll be your guy. This time is going to be different.
You could say one thing in Trump's favor. He generally has acted on what he said he was going to do.
This isn't a surprise.
Which is what is so funny to me.
Well, that's the surprise.
All the people,
is that he did what he said he was going to do, and everyone else has promised to do what they were going to do, and they never did. So to the degree I can credit him, I will say that while I might have been opposed to some of his promises, he's at least made his effort to fulfill them, and to that he deserves credit.
So, I would agree with that. And I'm not bringing this issue up just to say, he moved it to Jerusalem. Right. Because whenever I saw this coming out, I'm like, why does it even matter? Like, I had no idea what the significance behind Jerusalem was. I mean, I realized Jerusalem is a significant city for 3 of the world's leading religions, and that can make it important, very important, between the monotheistic religions such as Christianity, Islam, and the Jewish religion. But it's whenever you look into this, it's not just a religious issue, which I think when doing my research for this, a lot of different conservative news outlets have portrayed it as solely a religious issue. Like it's become for the Mike Pence evangelical Republicans out there. This has become an issue of showing Donald Trump's support of Christianity, and they say that moving the U.S. embassy back to Jerusalem, or not back to Jerusalem, but to there in the first place, is actually making it to where the United States is claiming that Christianity is the religion of the nation, or like official or something, and that's not it at all. If you read one of those, that's fake news. Hashtag fake news.
Unfortunately, and I will just acknowledge that I was not a particularly big fan of RFRA, just so you know, okay? And I cautioned against it and suggested to its author.
Were you in favor of the photo shoot?
No, and that's where I was going. The problem isn't that I believe that RFRA was good or bad per se.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that it was
the appearances.
a superfluous and an unnecessary act that likely would cause reaction that was hysterical. Guess what happened?
My brother was on vacation in Australia, and what was happening in Indianapolis was top news down there.
So to that end, and whether it was poorly framed by our vice president and then governor, doesn't really matter. The media took it and they made it its own thing. And I found myself defending something that I didn't generally agree with, only because I thought that it was being distorted as to what the point was. So
exactly.
To your point today, it's the same thing. I'm somewhat agnostic over this action, but I find myself defending the president because, you know, if your argument is that we don't move it because it could be a flashpoint for disruption in the Middle East and cause them to not want to negotiate, my argument is
how's that working for you?
That's lost, okay?
Yeah.
It's 22 years. You haven't moved the needle.
Exactly.
You can't use that excuse.
We've been using this excuse, and we've been doing this for my entire life. Literally since I was born. This has been going on. We've been doing the same plan.
What year was that, Dakota?
1996. I was the first baby of the new year, Jeremiah. My picture was in the paper and everything.
So on January 1st every year, you wear a little diaper and a sash that says Baby New Year?
Yeah, and there's an old guy that's in the ICU.
And Dakota and I are celebrating his birthday together, and I'm going to be the old guy this year, and he's going to be the baby.
Yep, that's how it goes.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, yeah, it's obviously it's not worked, and I think that's what a lot of the centrist people. A lot of people like me that are looking at this from both sides and trying to come up with a factual argument, you know, and which is becoming increasingly more difficult as time goes on.
Well, Facebook, I think social media, Facebook in and of itself, doesn't lend itself very well to intelligent debate. Just read any of my posts, okay? Because they turn to
it goes downhill quick.
They go sideways. But to your point,
that's the thing.
To your point, Chuck Schumer's the one that's out there taking credit for this now. Brad and I talked about this earlier. Part of the problem is Donald Trump doesn't want anyone to take credit for it, so he's not going to promote the fact that Chuck Schumer is promoting the fact that he advised him. If Brad and I were running the world, we would have brought Chuck Schumer and he would have stand behind him instead of Mike Pence. And when I made this announcement, it would have seemed like it was a collective with thoughts.
A few of the more conservative news articles that I read about this pointed out Mike Pence is standing behind President Trump, and that is to showcase the fact that this is America is now officially a Christian nation.
Fair enough. So Schumer could have been standing there, and I don't think it would have changed that message. It's Judeo-Christianity. It still would have served both.
Representative Pelosi voted for it as well in the 90s, but she's apparently changed her position because it was
totally changed her position.
The hypocrisy is going to be a muck.
So basically, the Great Britain didn't leave Israel, didn't stop occupying the area until 1948. So I'm reading right off of here, and this comes from The Guardian, which was like one of the only unbiased news sources that I could actually find, which is like, I mean, say what you will, but it was a good article. But basically this says...
it's like the GQ of European news.
Yeah. It says, British rule left the area in 1948. The Jordanian military invaded to occupy the Old City and the Arab East Jerusalem. Decades later, Israel captured that land from Jordan during the 1967 Middle East War and annexed it. So that's where we're getting this property from. was they annexed it during the 1967 Middle East War.
It was the 6 Days War or whatever they had.
Yeah, and the big key here is this final sentence. That move has not been recognized internationally. So that's what the big deal is. Okay, this isn't recognized by the United Nations, and it's basically because of it kind of falls back on that religious sentiment because of other countries in the region, other world leaders in the region the governments are still very dominated by the religious leaders over there. So like the Palestinian government is still very dominated by Islamic
right,
leaders.
There's not a lot of secular governments
right,
out in the Middle East. Right?
And that's where the problem gets to, is because then all of a sudden you have different people who want to claim Jerusalem as their own, and then the Jews want to claim Jerusalem as their own, then the Christians and the Muslims get mad. And then the Muslims want to claim it for their own. Then the Christians and the Jews get mad.
This morning, I think it was the Onion. Is Onion or Babylon Bee? One of the satirical
I think
articles
it was Onion,
posted that the Palestinian nation was going to locate their embassy in Houston, Texas, because President Polk had illegally seized Texas from Mexico
right.
in 1860 whatever. So they were going to go ahead and just put their embassy in Houston, and they were,
But the biggest thing I want to point out is basically it's the Palestinian government that's so against this. See,
well, of course, it's a
yeah.
If you're arguing on their behalf, you would be livid.
Right.
Agreed.
You would
say,
hey, give us our problem.
Give us our property back that you kicked our ass and took it from the war. We want it back, please. After 6 nations attacked you, sorry about you keeping it. There's a part of this where I just am not sympathetic to that argument. Right.
Yeah.
Try. You've had years. I believe in good faith. Bush and Obama, extending my credit to Obama, tried to negotiate a peace and tried to find a settlement. I mean, even Clinton to a degree. It's been not successful. So I'm back with you, Dakota. Hey, that isn't working.
Yeah, it's
go
not
to B.
working. So let's finally, Palestine, just recognize the Israeli government as their own sovereign state and not just your property. Okay, it's over. I mean, what? It's 1967, right? I mean, and you fought over it from starting in 1948. Like, this is getting a little bit insane. It's time to start. They have there's a government there, like.
Poor young naive Dakota thinking that the Middle East is just going to let bygones be bygones.
We're still fighting over daylight saving time in Indiana.
Yeah, 3,000 years later.
Yeah, class basketball.
Like the Middle East hasn't gotten over things from 3,000 years ago. Right. This is like nothing.
It's just I would think that I would feel personally if all of a sudden California did decide to secede from the Union. I would be perfectly okay with it.
Me too.
Adios.
And I would say, I would let bygones be bygones, as you just said. Like, that we can accept it. I mean, they have their own government. You're on your own now, right? Like,
I read I'll send it to you later. I read a good article in the National Enquirer about the anti-Semitism in the European governments and how it's masked in this hue and cry.
The National Enquirer?
No, is that what I said?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which one was it? It's not the tabloid one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
review. I'm sorry.
I wondered where you were going.
Time out.
Not the Enquirer.
I'm not drunk, but that was pretty bad. Okay. That was off of the FUBAR review. And it was by David French, ironically, who is no fan of Trump. And he basically said, all these European nations are, just couching this in their natural anti-Semitism because they don't believe that the Jewish should have control of their own capital, which is ludicrous.
Right, and it was, let's see here. I need to find the year again. Okay, so it was in 1980 that the Israelis passed a law that declared Jerusalem, in quotes, a complete and unified city of their country and its capital. The United Nations, which regards East Jerusalem as occupied, took the position that the city's status is disputed and in need of resolution through negotiations between Israel and Palestinians.
It's been like that all of our lives.
I actually don't believe anything Trump did yesterday is in contrast to that. He did not say that the status of the city is now unified as a result of his decision. He really said that we're moving it to respect their decision.
Do we have an embassy to Palestine? And if so, where is it?
No. I don't believe so.
We don't recognize them?
I think we do recognize them, but do not believe that we have an embassy. And clearly it's not going to be in Gaza. Okay, because that was a whole Bush. Hey, let's let them go ahead and elect their own government, and you know what they got: Hamas. I mean, that was one of those exercises in democracy that might work in Henry County, but it didn't work real well in the Middle East.
Yeah, and back to your point about Donald Trump talking about the 1980 law that the Israelis passed. Basically, what he said, I think one of the key points in his speech today was he basically just summed up his opinion on the entire issue, and it was, today Jerusalem is the seat of modern Israeli government. It is the home of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, as well as the Israeli Supreme Court. He said it is the location of the official residence of the prime minister and the president, and it is the headquarters of many government ministries.
It's their capital.
You look at it that way, and it's hard to argue we shouldn't have an embassy there. If you just look at that one fact, you look at this one paragraph and you think, okay, but then you get to the chief Palestinian negotiator. I'm not going to butcher his name, but it's something like Saeb Erkat or something. And
Steve Air.
Basically, he pretty much said that this is in quotes actually, President Trump just destroyed any policy of a two-state solution. So then you look at that and you go, oh crap. Maybe this is just going to be more of the same.
Trying to keep up with Dakota's notes, by the way, has been a nightmare for me because he's reading from the bottom up. I don't know how we got to where we are, but
that was a horrible mistake I made whenever I was putting this in. The bottom,
like the National Enquirer.
Yeah, the bottom two are actually supposed to be above the top four. So
okay, so back to the premise of his argument, which is that it's going to destroy the opportunity for peace by making this decision.
Yep. Correct. I mean,
welcome to the party.
What he said Trump just destroyed any policy of a two-state solution. While the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin, I do know how to pronounce that.
Netanyahu, who's a big fan of Obama.
Yeah, he said that this was an important step towards peace. A very big fan of Obama.
Oh yeah,
loved the guy. Probably said thanks Obama more than anybody at this table.
I suspect. Well, once would be more than me anyway, but that's possible. That was, again, we're back full circle to the problem. I don't think there was any movement. I think it's been pretty stagnant. To the argument
there has been some. There have been a few protests that have broken out. Actually, right after the announcement, the U.S. embassies in Turkey, Jordan, Germany, and Britain all issued security alerts to all Americans in the area. So, I mean, they were expecting a lot more, I think, than what actually happened.
I heard that in Jerusalem or Palestine somewhere that the protests were muted because it was cold rain. And then, keep your angst to a minimum if the weather's not,
however, New Palestine.
They probably were.
They were up in arms.
Yeah.
Well, it's the football team is pretty good, so those guys are pretty. They stay as long as they're they're undefeated. New Pal's usually pretty calm. As long as the football team is good, the Dragons they're under control.
So Dakota, based upon this conversation, do you favor his decision or not? I was just curious where you were going, or is it just to get to the discussion?
I'm pretty neutral. I think that there's positive. I think there's a lot of positive sides to this. You can definitely look at it, look at this decision, and go, and say, I think that this was the right decision if we actually want to get peace in the area. I think that you can make that argument. I think that it's really easy to make the argument. And a lot of libertarians that I follow on Facebook, some of the groups I'm in, people are definitely saying that. And I think that libertarians as a consensus, which is really hard to lump libertarians in a group, but I think a lot of us are in support of this. But I can also see where you would say, this just made tensions worse.
Well, couldn't you make that same argument with the Iranian nuclear deal? That
Absolutely.
Its intent was for peace.
When
right?
you're talking about the Middle East, you cannot. There's no way to just look at it and say this is concrete the right decision.
This makes sense.
Yeah, there's nothing out there that you can actually say, oh yeah, this is what the solution is. Like there's nothing like that out there. And I think that from my spare bedroom in Newcastle, Indiana, I think it would be really easy for me to make a speculation or make an assumption like that. But I think I would be woefully ignorant if I tried to do so.
Well, I think in the last 10 minutes, we've definitely solved the Middle East problems.
By basically saying, we don't know either.
As libertarians, I generally just think we got to have an embassy somewhere. I'm not interested in who's running this government or that government. I want to talk and trade with everybody and just deal with what's in our side of our own borders. The rest of it, man, we've been dropping bombs for a long time. It hasn't gotten anywhere. Well, like the drug war. How's that working for you guys?
We just keep being stupid.
So, yeah. All right. Well,
we've gotten to final thoughts, Jeremiah.
We made
on
it.
This episode too, right on time. It seems like as well.
We're hanging in there.
See, I'm getting pretty good at writing these show notes.
You're getting a feel for this thing. 32 episodes in, we're making it.
Even though my last two were supposed to go up above the first four, but
someday we'll actually release the show notes.
No one knew that until he
pointed it out. I was following along really well, but whatever.
So Bill,
yes, sir.
Thank you for coming here, man.
Thanks for inviting me.
We appreciate you making the trip.
I'm welcome to be back in Henry County. It's a lovely Henry County, I might add. Okay, home of my bride.
How do if people want to learn more about your candidate,
right.
Get involved, contribute, do some parades, get involved in everything that's coming up? What's the best way to do that?
MacKenzie for Congress would be the best way to go about it. We have www. Do people still do that, by the way?
Just people of your age.
Okay, that's why I ask. Okay,
HTTP
HTTP://
Thank you.
www. You have to actually open up the Netscape Navigator first.
I deserve that. Okay, so deserve that. So
I think it was harsh. Actually,
MacKenzie for Congress. No, it was right on. I ask if you're going to ask a stupid question, be prepared for a stupid
I follow
answer.
MacKenzie for Congress on Facebook.
Thank you, sir.
I see their ads a lot.
Yes.
I also follow Jonathan Lamb. But
yes.
And Mike Kreider and Greg
Pence.
All of them. One of them is going to be my congressman.
It's going to be.
We have to be kind of unbiased on this issue. But one thing I do know for sure, I want all four of them in my studio so that way I do have a congressman that's been in my house.
Well, I will tell you that Stephen MacKenzie had anticipated to be here, and I think I know we are receptive to a return visit at the future date, and you can have the real deal instead of some reasonable facsimile.
Yeah, I've met Stephen once before. I met him actually while I was getting my haircut at the barber shop.
I was there.
I had just gotten off of work. He was in a nice suit and tie, and he was clean, and I was dirty and in a pair of coveralls and getting my haircut.
We were attending a speech contest at the GOP headquarters.
I was in the very first Henry County GOP speech contest
kidding?
Back in the day. Yeah, 20-some years ago.
I was going to say, what decade was that?
That was a very young.
Jeremiah's pretty old.
A very young.
WWW all the time.
I was around when the internet was invented, but now I know what Twitter is.
Well, again, MacKenzie for Congress. He does have a Twitter feed and a Facebook page, and you can, like Bill Smythe if you want, and I'll probably accept your invite. Like Brad, I gave up being discriminatory a while ago. I think I have 1,500 some friends, and I know 8 of them. I mean, maybe 9. I don't know. Now I was. I was a successful bar owner until I wasn't in Hamilton County, and so a lot of my customers, of course, would be friends. This thing just took off into stupid, and that's why I have way more than I actually have friends.
So if I need Smythe lobbying services, how do I get that?
You just reach out to Brad or just send me a message as you have, and I'll be happy to take you up on that.
All right.
I am busy until at least the primary. I plan to be busy through the general. So I will be passing on this legislative session. Brad and I were working on something that we gave strong consideration to, and I think it's something that we both believe would be the betterment of the state, but we just couldn't put it together. And then
You got a long session coming up in about 12 months.
Yes.
Well,
and
very
that's
good.
what will make a difference then.
A good deal. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Make sure you help us pick on Brad here. His final thoughts segment is coming up. What do you have to pitch, man? What's
Hey,
anything we've
don't
skipped
pick on
out
Brad
on?
too much. He skipped a date
That's
just
correct.
for us.
That's correct.
And according to him, a hot date.
A network anchor.
So can we get a listener out there to want to fill in after the show for his absence to date?
Yeah, get in the DMs. We'll reveal
Yeah.
the location somewhere north of Q Avenue in Newcastle, Indiana. And
Yeah.
Brad can
We'll
take
hook
him
that
down
up.
to.
They've only been seeing the side of his head. There we go. Now we got it.
wave into the
you
camera.
Are you looking for final thoughts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Come to the Antelope Club.
come to the Animal Club. Check
Good
it
place
out.
downtown. Yeah.
You could rub elbows with people like Dakota and I, and people like the governor of Indiana, or your new board. The Libertarian group took over your board down there. I saw the Millers or
The Miller, Justin and Ashley Miller are both on the board. Abdul, who's
friendly.
friendly, is the
I'm-
club president.
I'm an elk. I don't know if I can be a crossbreed of an elk and an antelope. That would
be weird
weird.
horns.
You would be hunted.
More so.
the very rare elkalope.
So otherwise, I don't know. I got nothing to pitch but me. Since I skipped this date, I probably am going to have to go out and find another one.
Well, have you checked the Henry County Tinder?
Yeah. On the,
I have not been on Tinder or.
the Tinder, the Bumble.
I don't know.
You do
I'm
you, man.
I'm engaged, so I don't
Does
have
that
any
start
of
with
those apps.
HTTP?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's a good answer. All right. Well, thank you, Brad, very much.
Thank you
It's
guys
great
for
to catch up with you and have you here. Dakota, what you got? Anything else?
I got some final thoughts here. I do want to talk a little bit more about Mike Pence. Basically,
Vice President Pence.
Vice President Mike Pence. I do want to talk about him a little bit. Read that article. It was more of a progressive article. It talked about how it tried to paint him as power hungry, but I don't think that it was anything surprising. But even though they did that, as I was reading it, I really did realize that Mike Pence, even though I may disagree with a lot of the things he has and with a lot of things that he has brought to the table in the past, I think that he's I think he truly is a man of character. Like he does what he believes.
He believes.
And he believes what he says. And I gotta say, like, I really respect that. I didn't think very highly of Mike Pence after he joined up with the Trump campaign, just because I didn't think highly of Trump. But I mean, I read an article that was trying to paint him in a bad light, and it painted him in a really good light for me. And I'm excited to see actually what Mike Pence has in store for him. Even just being the vice president, I think that I don't think he's gonna be stopping there.
He's pretty good at what he does.
He is. He is good. I just wanted to give that shout out, and I hope that Mike Pence comes on our show, even though I'll have to have a bunch of dogs and a bunch of Secret Servicemen search my home. I would be willing to make that sacrifice, and that sacrifice to my privacy and my freedom, to have Mike Pence come on the Boss Hog of Liberty.
But you're making him come to your studio. You're not going to go somewhere else.
Hell no, I'm not going somewhere else. He's coming to me.
Well, it sounds like the city of Columbus is looking for a little relief for all the overtime they're paying their officers. I'm sure they'd be happy to pass that off on the
Mayor York. Look out! Dakota's invited the vice president to come on by.
Yeah, I saw him invited the mayor.
Awkward
like the
silence
look.
out there in Westwood.
I was staring into the
I
into
saw
the
that.
camera.
That was telling.
Boy,
Hey, I'll have Mayor York on. I don't care. He can bring a yard sign, hang it up in my guest bedroom. I'll hang it up there.
Dakota for mayor,
Yep.
possibly.
No,
Is there a minimum age
not
requirement?
not for me.
mayor?
I'm gonna do my best.
18.
I'm gonna do
He
my best to
qualifies.
convince Lisa Joe Crosby to run for mayor.
There we go. All right. Well, Dakota, thank you very much for leading us through the mess in the Middle East. That was there was no way in the world I was going to do that today. So I thank you for
Tried
covering
very
that.
hard. It's like I better not do this while I'm on the clock at work. Usually it's okay if I just click one article, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do some real digging on this.
It's
one.
like a sixth
So
grade
I-
social studies project,
I
everybody.
stayed in my office after work, off the clock, and did this research for you guys.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
All right. Well, I need to thank Tony Roach. He was in the sniper position for my big surprise with Sarah Potter on Saturday. Awesome guy. Appreciate what he did very much for me. It was a fun weekend. I got to surprise my parents. They didn't know it was coming, so that was a neat little deal too. Dakota and Audrey.
I gotta plug that in there really quick. We all met up at Montgomery's Steakhouse in Spiceland afterwards, and Jeremiah's family had no idea what was coming. So Jeremiah had his his baby brother Danny tell all of his family, I've been looking at jobs out of state, and I have some news to announce to you guys. Come meet up with me for lunch. So Audrey and I are the first people in the parking lot, and then all of your family starts piling in, and I hear your mom go, why in the hell are Dakota and Audrey there?
Didn't know they were that close with Danny.
No, she didn't. And then Danny pulled up, and they all thought we would go inside, and Danny's like, no, we have to stay out here till Jeremiah and Sarah show up, and your mom goes, what is going on? They were very concerned, like that. It went from just Danny was leaving to Danny is leaving and he's taking Jeremiah with him.
The entire family's going away.
And then it turned into good news.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I can't believe nobody had told them. So when we walked up, we had this weird muddling around, awkward, like nobody. We were just the other people walking up. Raised her hand up and said she said yes, y'all. It was just like the weirdest. Like it was not the reaction I was expecting from the crowd. So
we all clapped, and your younger sister Danny threw daggers at her boyfriend.
My younger sister Danny,
or your younger sister Hannah.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh man. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. This was a lot of fun. Next week we're going to talk with Chad Malacote, the park board president of Memorial Park. Going to cover some stuff they've got going on over there. Lots and lots and lots of upgrades and things going on in Memorial Park. Looking forward to that conversation. Like us on Facebook, subscribe. We're on the YouTube. We're probably 20 or 25 subscriptions short of having enough on there to get our permanent URL, and that's when the business cards are coming out, and then I'll be a promoting fool. So
is that a www?
It'll be a www.youtube/something.
I knew.
And
That's the coming thing.
That's it. I'm very excited about this internet. I think it's going to work out.
Well, thank you, Al Gore.
All right, guys. We will see y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to the We're Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at We'reLibertarians.com.